We've actually had a pretty good time, and actually Finland itself is quite untouched by COVID. I'll show you a picture which I found from the Twitter feed. This is what social distancing looks like in Finland, and mind you, this is pre-COVID. So when COVID came around and they said you have to have like 6 feet social distancing, Finns were like, that's way too little. that's not enough. So Finland has been doing pretty well, all things considering, and but still it doesn't change the fact that I'm feeling a bit nervous right now. But I'll get to the groove once I start talking about this topic. So 2 years ago, almost to the date, I was on the plane to Budapest for Super Week, and I was frantically, with my 1 hour of Wi-Fi time on the plane, I was frantically pressing reload on the Twitter feed for Super Week because I was expecting Brian Kuhn and Scott Herman to make an announcement because they were talking at the very time that I was on the plane. And I was expecting someone to talk about it. And then Martin actually just tweeted about that, hey, by the way, server-side tagging is coming. Or he didn't say, by the way, he said, wow, server-side tagging is coming. And so I unloaded a couple of tweets right there and then about what I thought about the paradigm. And if you've been following along anything what I've been writing about over the last couple of years, or just watching social feeds in general, you'll know that I'm pretty excited about it. But it feels like now's a good time to look back. 2 years ago, it was announced. 6 months from that, so 1.5 years ago, it was introduced to beta. And just over 6 months, or just under 6 months ago, it was released, or the beta label was stripped off to coincide with the release of a couple of advertising stack tags into server-side tagging. So it's 1.5 years since the general public learned about server-side tagging or got to use it. So it's a good time to take a look back and see what it's accomplished and if there are still some gaping holes in the implementation, in the feature itself. So 2 years ago, I wrote a couple of things that I thought about server-side tagging. I listed a couple of things I was really excited about, listed a couple of things I was looking forward to. Much of the things I talked about had to do with consolidating data streams. So being able to reduce client-side load, being able to reduce the amount of information that's being sent directly from the client to the vendors. And we just basically consolidate things, make things flow better, make things flow easier. So that's one of the things I want to take a look back now and see if that's actually been accomplished, or if this is all just wishful thinking. And before I go there, for the benefit of everyone, I think it's also good to establish some terminology and establish what we're talking about. I have no idea if everybody knows about server-side tagging or if it's just some term that they've heard about, so let's just quickly take a look at what we're talking about here. When we talk about server-side tagging, we have to juxtapose it against what isn't server-side tagging, so client-side tagging, so-called regular tagging. And this involves typically a tag manager. It doesn't have to be a tag manager. You can just have vendor JavaScript running on the page itself, running in the browser. And then you have a website that needs to communicate with various endpoints. They can be advertisers, they can be analytics platforms, they can be marketing platforms, they can be databases, whatever you think of, whatever you want to send from the browser outwards. And so when something happens, typically the browser communicates directly with the vendor servers. So there's an HTTP request stream going on. There's a request being sent to servers and then a response being sent back. And now this direct line of communication with the Facebook pixel, with GA, with Google Ads, we kind of take it for granted because that's how it's been going on for years, for decades even. That's how marketing works. You install the Facebook pixel, you install the insert some nasty ad tech, other nasty ad tech vendor pixel, and that's just how it goes. We take it for granted. Data is being sent, and then our reports are being populated. If we take a look at what's actually being sent, is a total freeze. Well, I'll just ring. Oh, here we go. Just needed some love. So first of all, we are typically fetching something from a content distribution network, right? So before we send anything to Facebook, we download their JavaScript. Before we send anything to GA, we download their JavaScript. And same thing for Google Ads. It's quite rare to just directly implement a tracker ping using an image tag, for example. It's typical to download JavaScript. And when you download JavaScript from a third-party vendor, you basically give it full privilege to act on the browser. There's some propositions going on with browsers like Brave where it would be possible to isolate third-party JavaScript from first-party JavaScript. So be able to kind of build a membrane between these vendor layers and the site itself. But it hasn't come to fruition yet. So right now, when you install the Facebook JavaScript or the Google Analytics JavaScript or whatever on the site, on the page, by loading the CDN, through the CDN, you are basically giving that JavaScript full rights to do whatever it likes. You can prevent it with some content security policies, you can prevent it with some imaginative client-side hacks, but the vast majority of cases, the long tail of sites implementing these things are getting full access. So that's one problem. The other problem is this whole discussion around e-privacy, around personal data, around persistence, around data transfers, around just basically using the user's browser or terminal device as a store for identifiers without the user explicitly being able to choose how, when, and where those identifiers are dropped. So the JavaScript running in the browser, it just doesn't build those analytics in it. It actually discussion around e-privacy, around personal data, around persistence, around data transfers, around just basically using the user's browser or terminal device as a store for identifiers without the user explicitly being able to choose how, when, and where those identifiers are dropped. So the JavaScript running in the browser, it just doesn't build those analytics, it just doesn't build or terminal device problem. The other problem is this whole discussion around e-privacy, around personal data, around persistence, around data transfers, around just basically using the user's browser or terminal device as a store for identifiers without the user explicitly being able to choose how, when, and where those identifiers are dropped. So the JavaScript running in the browser, it just JavaScript full rights to do whatever it likes. You can prevent it with some to isolate third-party JavaScript from first-party JavaScript. So be able to kind of build a membrane between these vendor layers and the site itself. But it hasn't come to fruition yet. So right now, when you install the Facebook JavaScript or the Google Analytics JavaScript or whatever on the site, on the page, by loading the CDN through the CDN, you are basically giving that JavaScript full rights to do whatever it likes. You can prevent it with some content security policies. You can prevent it with some imaginative client-side hacks. But the vast majority of cases, the long tail of sites implementing these things are getting full access. So that's one problem. The other problem is this whole discussion around e-privacy, around personal data, around persistence, around data transfers, around just basically using the user's browser or terminal device as a store for identifiers without the user explicitly being able to choose how, when, and where those identifiers are dropped. So the JavaScript running in the browser, it just doesn't build those analytics in it. It actually introduces persistence. It has to, because one kind of unfortunate for analytics and advertising, one unfortunate feature of the web is that it's stateless. You know, what happens on one page doesn't follow you to the next page, so we need cookies, we need browser storage, we need stateful mechanisms to persist that information from one page to the next. But the problem is that we are also persisting information that the user doesn't necessarily have any say in. They might not want an identifier to be attached to them. But because of the ubiquitousness of cookies and how easy they are to use as an API, this has become a de facto standard of the web, and it's in large populated by these vendor JavaScript libraries. And now I'm just talking about first-party storage. Some of these libraries also make use of third-party storage, such as third-party cookies, or URL decoration, which are a whole different class of problems, also currently raising a ruckus in the web because of how browsers are trying to suffocate those. Now, these are all relics of the direct communication between the vendor and the browser. Cross-site tracking, I don't know what that is. Cross-site tracking ensues. That's what follows when you have these identifiers. That's what follows when Facebook is able to follow you from one site to the next. And if you've been following what the Brave browser does, if you're familiar with intelligent tracking prevention from WebKit, you'll know that cross-site tracking in particular is the one thing they're trying to get rid of. Of course, they are throwing a lot of babies out with the bathwater as they're doing that, but cross-site tracking is the key term. That's what they want to prevent. That's what most browsers, Google Chrome including, assuming you believe their marketing spiel, believe to be the biggest problem of the advertising complex at the moment when it comes to client-side mechanisms. Then we have a pretty new thing, or definitely not new, but a very good wake-up call recently, and I'm sure you've been talking about this over here, but data transfer laws add a whole new thing to this. When the browser is communicating with Facebook, it's enough that it's communicating the IP address. It's enough that it's communicating some payload parameter that you never thought would be personal data. But if the court decided it is personal data, you are violating data transfer laws in the act of sending that data to Facebook or to any other, I'm talking particularly about EU to US transfers. There are other types of data transfer, of course, and they might be illegal as well. Who knows? It's so difficult to follow the narrative these days. There are some, communicating directly with endpoint opens the door for cross-site scripting attacks. If there's a takeover of the domain you're communicating with, Facebook and Google typically don't have this problem, but then there's a long tail of advertisers who might not take as good care of their properties. And then there are, of course, from analytics, we are very familiar with PII leaks. So whenever there's a haphazard email address in the page URL, you can rest assured that it's being leaked to every single one of the marketing vendors running on the page. So again, regular tagging has its uses. I'm not saying it's a deprecated technology. There are very many uses for it. The time to market with it might be really fast. And it's basically zero cost when it comes to implementation. But these are some of the artifacts that follow when you opt into such a mechanism. So what does server-side tagging solve? Juxtaposed against this, we still have a website. We still have marketing vendors. We still have partners that need this information. But instead of sending data directly to the vendors, server-side tagging introduces a midpoint, a middleman, an intermediary that intercepts the data stream from the browser before forwarding it to the vendors. And crucially, this green block here, by the way, I mentioned this to Krista and Daniel over lunch, but the more years I do this, the uglier my slides get. And I think I've overdone myself this year, and you're going to be in for a treat. There are some really hideous slides here, but the green block reminded me that I have to mention this. So there's no drop shadow, nothing, it's just a green block. So importantly, the server container would be owned by the same entity that owns the website. So it's in a first-party relationship, both in a technical way, because it's running in a subdomain of the website, but also in an organizational way. It's not a given, but that's typically how it's done. So what does the server container give you? Well, it lets you validate the hit in real time. When the browser sends the hit to the server container, before the hit is forwarded to the vendors, you can validate it. You can remove parameters, you can update parameters, you can purge PII, you can enrich the hit. Kind of a classic example that I used to use when universal analytics was still a thing, but based on the previous talk, it probably isn't going to be a thing for a long time. The universal analytics has the event data model and the event value field, which takes an integer. It takes a number as a parameter. If you send a string, what happens? Who knows? If you send, let's say, CMO as the event value of an event, yeah, the hit gets dropped. It's not just that the event value is not, so the entire hit gets dropped. And oh boy, have I had situations where event value has been populated as another dimension, because value doesn't necessarily entail a metric. So with server-side tagging, you can nip those in the bud. You can look for a specific manipulation. You look for, is there a non-number as event value? If so, let's turn it to 0, for example, drop it from the hit. So this is the kind of classic fixing the hit before it leaves. It's a staple in tools like Snowplow and other more hands-on data management platforms. So server-side tagging gives you that possibility at ingestion time. Consolidation of strings I already mentioned, so it lets you, instead of sending a hit to Facebook, a hit to Google Ads, a hit to Google Analytics, you just send a single request to the server and then that sends it forward. So you're reducing the amount of bandwidth and computation required by the client. Anonymization, a really topical thing, again, because of these data transfer laws. With a server container, nothing identifying of the user must be leaked to the vendor. IP address is typically very difficult to change because you need a proxy or you need a VPN or you need something, you need to opt into something. With a server container, if you choose, You can drop the user's IP address. It doesn't have to be anywhere visible. The only thing that the vendor sees is the server container's IP address. So it's the ultimate democratization of personal data because now everybody is the server container. The machine's one. You can drop, you can drop other stuff from it. You can drop the Google client ID. You can hash it, randomize it, salt it. So you can treat the payload to be more compliant. Content management, I'll just skip that for now. Client-side performance, very important, of course. So reducing the amount of work that the browser has to do will improve performance. Fewer JavaScript libraries need to be downloaded. Fewer content security policies need to be relaxed. Fewer hits need to be sent from the browser. This is a best-case scenario, of course. There are ways to do this really badly as well. And then there's this idea of tracking protection, which has to do with, well, how should I phrase this? Because I know that this is a very favorite topic for many, but has to do with using the server-side tagging proxy for circumventing ad blockers, for circumventing intelligent tracking prevention by elongating the expiration of cookies or the lifetime of cookies. So server container gives you these mechanisms that let you sometimes kind of screw the user over by disobeying their wishes about using an ad blocker. I feel very strongly about it if you haven't noticed yet. But also lets you treat cookies in a way that, for example, Safari and WebKit browsers don't get into a hissy fit over, which I think is a perfectly valid way to do it. So anyway, these are kind of the benefits of using a server container when compared with regular tagging. Now, the crux of the matter is that these are all kind of positive things, or they can be portrayed in a positive light. A server container also gives you amazing tools, like so much cloud muscle, so much scale, to do the dirtiest, black-hattedest things you can think of without the browser ever being aware of them, without auditors ever being aware of them. And I'll show you just how to do those here. Before we finally get to the actual presentation, well, one other thing I want to mention is the data flow taxonomy. And I don't think this is, well, it's just something I conjured when Jim Gordon, another Super Week resident, wrote an article and asked for some ideas about this, and I shared with him off the cuff some taxonomies. And in retrospect, I thought that was pretty clever. So we have the client-to-vendor stream. This is regular tagging. This is when the browser or the device communicates directly with the vendor. This is the business-as-usual way of doing tagging. This is how most vendors still want you to do it, especially if they need third-party cookies, because third-party cookies necessarily require a client. They necessarily require a browser to be in the midst. We have server-to-vendor streams. This would be, let's say, measurement protocol sending requests directly to Google Analytics. This would be your CRM forwarding information to another database. This would be, whatever has a server as the starting point. It doesn't necessarily have a client anywhere. A user is just a row in the CRM, a user ID that made a transaction, and then this is shipped directly to the vendor. This has never been as popular as you would think, partly because building the infrastructure requires developers, it requires work. There are some SaaS systems out there that specialize in this, but still, vendors aren't too excited about this because they lose the ability to track you in the client or in the browser. Then we have the client-to-server-to-vendor, the CSV, if you will. And this is what server-side tagging prototypically is. We have a browser communicating with the server owned by the company or the website, and then forwarding the information to the vendor. And I don't have any data to back this up, but I'm kind of looking forward to this becoming the norm more than anything else. Then we have a bit rarer, but server-to-server-to-vendor. So again, server-side tagging works in this, but instead of having the client as the first stop, we could have measurement protocol as the originator. Now, why would you do that? Why would you have measurement protocol or some other server-to-server call stop in a server-side tagging environment before forwarding to the vendors? Why not go with server-to-vendor directly? We'll take audience participation at a later time, my friend. It's because this is also a data ingestion system. It's not just a proxy. Remember that you can use this to split the data stream to multiple different endpoints. This is only privy to Google. It's only measurement protocol communicating with Google. This lets you take measurement protocol, send it to Google, but also send it to Facebook, send it to other vendors. So server-side tagging isn't only about shuffling those client-side hits, even though intuitively that's what we think it is for, because it has the words tag management. And tag management is a client-side phenomenon, or has been for so long. And then we have just one more weird one. And I'm kind of happy that it's way below the eye level, but we have client to server to vendor with a detour of client to vendor. Let me explain. Or who knows what this is?
Google Ads?
Yeah, Google Ads. Or how Google Ads works in server-side tagging. So we have a conversion event happening in the device. It communicates with the server-side endpoint saying, hey, a conversion event happened. The server-side endpoint sends the data to Google Ads servers. A conversion happened with this GCL ID and so on. But it also sends a message in the response back to the browser that, hey, would you mind stopping by DoubleClick on your way home? Right, so the response from the server instructs the browser to make a request to DoubleClick servers. Now, why would it do that? Because of third-party cookies. They are written on the DoubleClick domain. If you recall from earlier, third-party cookies require a browser. So for Google to make those third-party cookies available for them, they need the browser to communicate with DoubleClick. So I'm not thrilled about this mechanism. It seems like a kind of a cheap way to achieve what Google is trying to do. At the same time, I don't see them using the privacy sandbox yet, which is the kind of the replacement that Google is planning for third-party cookies. I don't see them going the Facebook route with a pure conversions API type approach, at least not until privacy sandbox is fully formed. So I kind of understand it, but I still don't understand it. So all of, just look at the colors that I've chosen. It's so vomity. It's seizure-inducing. Yeah, so we have, these all covered in this flag. It's all server-side tagging, potentially. Now you might wonder, oh, there's a laser here? No, that's not a laser. You might wonder how a server-side tagging endpoint could be the first step, how it could be it's seizure-inducing.
With respect to these frontier models, they're so interesting because it's a form of intelligence.
So I'm not thrilled about this mechanism. It seems like a kind of a cheap way to achieve what Google is trying to do. At the same time, I don't see them using the privacy sandbox yet, which is the kind of the replacement that Google is planning for third-party cookies. I don't see them going the Facebook route with a pure conversions API type approach, at least not until Privacy Sandbox is fully formed. So I kind of understand it, but I still don't understand it. So all of it, just look at the colors that I've chosen. It's so vomity. It's seizure-inducing. Yeah, so we have, these all covered in this flag. It's all server-side tagging, potentially. Now you might wonder, oh, there's a laser here? No, that's not a laser. You might wonder how a server-side tagging endpoint could be the first step, how it could be the origin. That's a good question. I'd love to know how that would work, but I don't see it as an impossible option. It's entirely possible that server-side tagging itself could initiate data flows, especially when it comes to kind of top of the Google is planning for third. The response from has been for so long. Split the data stream to multiple different endpoints. Then we have a bit rarer, but server to server still. Vendors aren't too excited about a user ID way of doing tagging. This is how most vendors still want you to do it, especially if they need third-party cookies, because third-party cookies necessarily require a client. They necessarily require a browser to be in the midst. We have server-to-vendor streams. This would be, let's say, measurement protocol sending requests directly to Google Analytics. This would be your CRM forwarding information to another database. This would be, whatever has a server as the starting point. It doesn't necessarily have a client anywhere. A user is just a row in the CRM, a user ID that made a transaction, and then this is shipped directly to the vendor. This has never been as popular as you would think, partly because building the infrastructure requires developers, it requires work. There are some SaaS systems out there that specialize in this, but still, vendors aren't too excited about this because they lose the ability to track you in the client or in the browser. Then we have the client-to-server-to-vendor, the CSV, if you will. And this is what server-side tagging prototypically is. We have a browser communicating with the server owned by the company or the website, and then forwarding the information to the vendor. And I don't have any data to back this up, but I'm kind of looking forward to this becoming the norm more than anything else. Then we have a bit rarer, but server-to-server-to-vendor. So again, server-side tagging works in this, but instead of having the client as the first stop, we could have measurement protocol as the originator. Now, why would you do that? Why would you have measurement protocol or some other server-to-server call stop in a server-side tagging environment before forwarding to the vendors? Why not go with server-to-vendor directly? We'll take audience participation at a later time, my friend. It's because this is also a data ingestion system. It's not just a proxy. Remember that you can use this to split the data stream to multiple different endpoints. This is only privy to Google. It's only measurement protocol communicating with Google. This lets you take measurement protocol, send it to Google, but also send it to Facebook, send it to other vendors. So server-side tagging isn't only about shuffling those client-side hits, even though intuitively that's what we think it is for because it has the words tag management. And tag management is a client-side phenomenon, or has been for so long. And then we have just one more weird one. I'm kind of happy that it's way below the eye level, but we have client to server to vendor with a detour of client to vendor. Let me explain. Or who knows what this is?
Google Ads.
Yeah, Google Ads. Or how Google Ads works in server-side tagging. So we have a conversion event happening in the device. It communicates with the server-side endpoint saying, hey, a conversion event happened. The server-side endpoint sends the data to Google Ads servers. A conversion happened with this GCL ID and so on. But it also sends a message in the response back to the browser that, hey, would you mind stopping by DoubleClick on your way home? Right, so the response from the server instructs the browser to make a request to DoubleClick servers. Now, why would it do that? Because of third-party cookies. They are written on the DoubleClick domain. If you recall from earlier, third-party cookies require a browser. So for Google to make those third-party cookies available for them, they need the browser to communicate with DoubleClick. So I'm not thrilled about this mechanism. It seems like a kind of a cheap way to achieve what Google is trying to do. At the same time, I don't see them using the Privacy Sandbox yet, which is the kind of the replacement that Google is planning for third-party cookies. I don't see them going the Facebook route with a pure conversions API type approach, at least not until Privacy Sandbox is fully formed. So I kind of understand it, but I still don't understand it. So just look at the colors that I've chosen. It's so vomity. It's seizure-inducing. Yeah, so we have these all covered in this flag. It's all server-side tagging potentially. Now you might wonder, oh, there's a laser here? No, that's not a laser. You might wonder how a server-side tagging endpoint could be the first step, how it could be the origin. That's a good question. I'd love to know how that would work, but I don't see it as an impossible option. It's entirely possible that server-side tagging itself could initiate data flows, especially when it comes to kind of top of the funnel in the data ingestion pipeline. Monitoring, self-monitoring, automatically creating some events, pulling information from APIs and so on. Anyway, that's the premise. That's what server-side tagging is looking like today. And now, to take a look at over the last 1.5 years, let's see what it's accomplished. And if it's managed to turn into what I grandiosely call a paradigm shift in our industry, because, and spoiler alert, I don't think it has, but it's getting close. I have 6 things I want to talk about. I have portability, and I'm going to be fast. Don't worry about there's 6. I'm going to be pretty fast. There's portability, there's data stream consolidation, there's opaqueness, there's onboarding, community, and potential. Sorry, Robert, I was too fast. Portability is the first one that I want to talk about. This is where we started. We have an app engine automatic provisioning system built into server-side tagging, and it is extremely easy to set up. You do not have to write a single line of code. You do not have to visit the Google Cloud Console. You click install Google Tag Manager, automatically provision a server. Okay, you do have to visit GCP if you don't have a billing account or if you don't have a cloud project, but it's a completely guided onboarding tour. So getting up and running with a cloud infrastructure at scale is super easy with server-side tagging. But if this were it, it would be pretty depressing because App Engine is not the perfect platform. App Engine Standard, which this relies on, is not suitable for production use. So when you go through the install Google Tag Manager route, automatically provision a server, you're just using it to kick the tires around a little, test the waters, figure out if server-side tagging is good for it. It's not suitable for a production setup. Instead, now that the deployment has been opened up using Docker, which is a container system for the cloud specifically, but on-premise as well, we can deploy server-side tagging in AWS, we can deploy it in Azure, we can deploy it on-premise, we can deploy it in Cloud Run, we can deploy it wherever we like where Docker is able to run. And Docker can run in a zillion different systems these days. Using the classic example, yes, it is possible to install server-side tagging in your smart refrigerator. And this is, so we are constantly ramping up. There's more and more solutions coming around that don't rely on App Engine anymore, and that's great. And Cloud Run specifically, I'm going to talk more about Cloud Run, so let me just skip over this. Data stream consolidation, and again, this is art. So before we had the client communicating with 3 separate vendors directly, right? Facebook, Google, Creo, whatever you can think of. With server-side tagging, we still have those 3 data streams, but they go through the GTM server. And yes, these are opposite colors in the spectrum, so they really jump out. And so this is one way to do it, but it's not perfect because you still have 3 data streams leaving the browser. And when you work with server-side, when you work with Google Cloud, you pay for network egress. And that means the outgoing communications from the server. So you pay 1, 2, 3, that's 3 network egress costs, and you pay 1, 2, 3, not for the request, but the response back to the browser. So request costs nothing, ingress is 0 cost. But unfortunately for HTTP, each request needs to be responded with a response, so you pay for the responses. So this is not perfect, you're still paying for network egress far too much. When you consolidate those 3 outbound streams to just 1, you reduce your network egress costs by 33%, and some decimals. So you're paying 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 6, right? And of course, the other benefits of data stream consolidation. We're not there quite yet with data stream. This applies. This is true. This graph, hideous as it is absolutely true. However, with this was the moment where I found transitions in Keynote. So we know there are measurable gains in client-side performance. We know that. It's a fact. When you don't download the Facebook library, or instead use the GA4 stream, the existing GA4 stream to also send data to Facebook, you are not exerting that cost on the client side anymore. Facebook is no more in the browser. It's measurable, it's immediate, and it's absolute fact. With a Google.
This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images, layout, everything, including the
Google Cloud Platform or Amazon or Azure or whatever you want to use. You have more scale and power than anything you could ever imagine the user's browser doing. This is kind of like, how crypto mining could do it, They want to run in the browser because that's the easiest way to do it, but of course if they want to do it at scale, they would have to go to the cloud. I don't know why it brought up crypto. It's been top of mind lately. So you just have a lot more power to do all this kind of consolidation, all this enhancement in the cloud. That's what cloud is built for in a way, for scale and for power. You can leverage a single well-known client-side tech for creating the stream. Now this is a euphemism for GA4 at the moment. Whether that's fortunate or unfortunate is up to you to decide. However, server-side tagging is extremely connected with GA4. The entire semantics of it are built around GA4. There are certain benefits with using GA4, especially if you want to do advertising and remarketing, and in the future content mode as well. And GA4 is, like, if you are running GA4 right now and you want to move to server-side, that's the kind of data stream you want to focus on, not universal and not anything else. I personally have been vouching for someone to create a small, slim client-side library whose only job is to create a simple event model, send it to the server, and then have the server forward it. Like super small, like almost no overhead at all. Maybe something forked off Snowplow or something similar, but we're not there yet. So this is, again, just the benefit of consolidation. We have improved security. You need fewer content security policy exceptions. You're able to catch data leaks, data breaches before they happen, before they ship to the vendors in the best case scenarios. It's not perfect, but it does give you the opportunity to do so. You have more control over what the vendors receive, and this is absolutely true as well. You get to choose what Facebook collects. You get to choose what Google collects. If you're using their tags, of course, it's possible that you'll still be hoodwinked. They can sell you the promise of more data by adding all this stuff. But you have the control, compared with the JavaScript library where you don't have that control. When you download it from the Facebook servers, that's it. You've just given Facebook the key to your site, and they can pretty much do whatever type of data collection they like. And enrichment, so this is the idea that you collect a stream from GA4, but it's not perfect for Facebook, so then you pull APIs and pull information from your CRM within the server. Eventually, that will be possible. And I can kind of give you a hint that there would be a big NDA label on top of that last thing for the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll see some improvements there very, very soon. Then the cons, there's the Vegas rule, which I'm going to come to very shortly. I'll just leave it dangling there as a kind of a hint. The client-side stream currently needs to encode all the information for all the different vendors. If you want to use GA4 to send data to Facebook, you need to add the Facebook-specific information into the GA4 stream. That's not pretty. You need to add the Facebook click ID, the FBP ID. You need to add external ID, content IDs. You need to add all that stuff because you can't yet do those manipulations in the server unless somebody builds a template for it. And even then, if you don't send the FBP value, then, well, actually you can generate that, so that's a bad example. But if you don't send the FBC, the click ID, then you just don't have that information. So it gets pretty ugly when you have a simple page view hit to GA4, but it has like 1,500 different things for 1,500 different vendors in the server. It's not pretty. So you're actually exerting pressure on the client again, more performance loss. This is a huge thing, and I'm going to return to it very shortly, but auditing is a huge problem. This is the opaqueness problem. This is the Vegas rule again. Not all vendors support server-to-server, which is weird because they have servers that you send data to, so why don't they allow access to those servers? Mostly it's because of the third-party cookie problem. And so many vendors are unable to look for an alternative because they don't have any alternative. And they just haven't formalized a proper server-to-server protocol that would be secure and safe to use. That's an unfortunate reality. And then there's a lack of standardization for the event data model itself. So consolidating data stream relies on the incoming data stream being able to be parsed into a fairly standardized format. Event name would always be a certain way. There would always be a certain type of page location parameter, user ID, client ID. They would all be part of the payload and the clients. There is a model that Google proposes, but it's missing a lot of bits and pieces. It's not perfect. And it's a model that Google decided on. It wasn't a model built by the community, so you might disagree with it. So there just isn't an imposed standard yet. And enrichment isn't really possible. Again, NDA, and there's hopefully going to be something about that very soon. So then the Vegas rule. So this is what happens in the server stays in the server. And this is the main benefit of server-side tagging in a way. You're able to utilize the full power and scale of a Google Cloud infrastructure or AWS. But what happens as a consequence is that everything from the client to the server the HTTP request and what happens in the browser, that can be audited. That's visible to the browser. You can see a data stream leaving the browser. You can see it. If you're worried about consent, you can look at the parameters sent with that request and compare those with your cookies. And if there's a match, you know that the site isn't respecting your consent. They're reading data from the cookies. This can be audited. Everything that happens from the server on cannot be audited, at least not in the same way that you would audit a web browser. You can't just open your developer tools and plug into the server and look what's going on. You have to kind of believe. I don't know if believe is the right word. You have to I don't know if trust is the right word. No, I don't think that's the right word either. You have to blindly and gullibly, imagine that they are respecting your options. And before, you only had to trust or believe, or whatever the word is, that the vendors are doing right by you. But now you also have to trust or believe, or whatever, that the site is doing right by you. This isn't new. Every single server log you send to our website servers, they can do whatever they want with that data without telling you. It's not like this is a completely new thing. But this opaqueness is just magnified by the fact that server-side tagging relies on this idea that you are moving complexity from the browser to the server. So the server is taking more and more on. And while it's a great thing, the problem is that we are losing visibility. And we are adding more and more requirements for the kind of stupid fluff that you see on websites these days, such as privacy policies and cookie disclaimers and processor lists and how to do data access. And I'm not saying they're stupid because they're bad things to have. I'm saying they're stupid because companies actually think that these are their way out. Just that they're having a privacy policy or a list of cookies that they're suddenly compliant. Especially this last part, how do you comply with data access requests or data removal requests when you're taking on more and more in a server container that doesn't necessarily support these types of things? So this has been a big pet peeve of mine from the beginning. This is a huge problem with server-side tagging. And it's an innocent problem in a way. It's necessitated by how the client-server architecture of the web works. It's not like Google decided to hide everything in the cloud from the browser. It's just how the server works. So what's the solution? How do we add transparency? Well, these are one way of doing it. Obviously, if you are taking a Google Analytics data stream and you're sending it to Facebook, even though you're not sending it to the Facebook from the client, you still need a legal basis to send the information to Facebook, right? You still need permission. You still need a lawful reason to do it. And for some reason, and I'm not saying anybody in this room or anybody in this country even or anybody in this continent, but for some reason some people are thinking that somehow this absolves them of that the browser has always been the crux of the problem, and that's just not true. The data flows don't care about that technique, about the technology. They just care about that the user's data is being protected in a good manner. And it doesn't help that we have things like ePrivacy Directive being a bit of shambles with all the different interpretations. But it's just the way. So how do we fix this? I don't know. What I would like to see, which is kind of impossible and a pipe dream, but some way to standardize a mechanism where the server responds back to the browser and tells them what happened, tells the browser what happened, what vendor endpoints were communicated with, how many requests were sent, what information was sent with those requests. So why is this kind of impossible? Well, it's an incredibly added cost to this because, again, it's network egress traffic. It has a lot of unnecessary information. The browser doesn't need to know everything. The browser then needs a mechanism to read this information, maybe a browser API. If we want a browser API, it's going to take 5 years to see that. Maybe a browser extension. But some way of having some sort of standardized communication path to see what goes on in the server. I don't know. This is just a hope. This is wishful thinking. But until this opaqueness problem is solved, server-side tagging does have a problem, and it's not going to shake it off very easily. About onboarding. So before, we started with the automatically provisioning a tagging server, and then when you wanted to upgrade to the production version with App Engine, you would run a shell script, which is kind of easy to run, but you need to go to the cloud console first and run some things, run a shell, and then use this beautiful command line interface. So it's quite a big, heavy task, and you still end up with just App Engine. App Engine is really old tech. Like it's really, really old tech in internet years. It's not serverless. It's running on compute engine instances. It's running on virtual machines in the cloud. It has a lot of overhead. You always pay for those instances. So what's the competition? Well, Cloud Run is what I hope, really, really hope that Google Tag Manager moves to natively very soon. I would imagine they would have moved ages ago, but Cloud Run was still kind of unfinished when they released server-side tagging, and it was still in beta for a very long time, and it still has a lot of unpolished corners. But with Cloud Run, so Cloud Run is a serverless container platform running on Google Cloud. So instead of whipping up virtual machine 1, virtual machine 2, virtual machine 3, it uses computation and memory rented across different machines and distributed evenly. So you end up with a system where Cloud Run actually can only use the resources that are on demand. So if your endpoint is not receiving any requests, Cloud Run has zero computation, zero memory use. Then when those requests are coming in, it starts firing them, it starts doing those cold boots. Whereas App Engine doesn't have a scale to zero with App Engine Flexible. If you're getting zero requests, you're still paying for your instances. You're paying for the minimum number of instances. And if each instance costs $40, you're paying at least 40 USD every month, even if you have zero traffic. Now that might sound like nothing, but you are paying 40 USD. Cloud Run isn't perfect yet. App Engine has a great feature where it automatically compresses files. So when you download the Google Tag Manager container through App Engine or analytics.js or GTag, it automatically compresses it. So it's great because it reduces the size from 200 kilobytes to 60 or 50 kilobytes. Cloud Run doesn't have this. It doesn't have an automatic compression system. You need to install a reverse proxy in front of the Cloud Run server, which is, again, totally doable, but it is an additional step. Or you need to hope that Google Tag Manager team introduces a native compression system. But then, again, that increases the computation demands for the Cloud Run endpoint. So this is an unsolved problem, and a problem that needs to be fixed because so many companies are already offloading their JavaScripts to run from their server-side tagging endpoint rather than directly from the vendors. App Engine has some helpful details automatically added to the response. So they do IP address geolocation. So they automatically resolve your IP address to geolocation, which might be useful in some cases. They do proxy traversal, so they return all the IP addresses in a chain rather than just the last one and so on. Cloud Run doesn't yet have anything like this. Maybe these will also be configurable at some point. Then we have this question of cost. So I don't have the data. I'm relying on an article by Mark Edmondson
Need a UGC video for your business? Find me and many other skilled creators on Fiverr. Or you could grab a
In this video, I'm going to show you the automated sales funnel that helps me direct traffic from TikTok and YouTube into my school community, the Content Academy, where I sell one-off products and monthly memberships without any sales calls. It starts with creating persuasive video content on the platforms like TikTok that helps me drive traffic to an opt-in page. And I'm currently using a tool called the Stand Store. This allows me to direct people to a landing page like this without a warning. You can see here other people have links as well, but when you click on them, it gives a user warning. So the Stand Store allows me to avoid that, which allows for a smoother transition to my page. And from here, I offer them a free automated system. Obviously, they can go directly into the community, but I do find that people tend not to just join communities for random reasons. So I have something that's free and compelling that they can get access to right away. When they click on this link, it's going to take them to Typeform, where I ask for their full name. And to get them through the funnel, I make it clear that I'm going to give them instant access to an automated content system that they can install. So they can go ahead and type in their name. And then I ask for their email. And again, I remind them that I'm going to give them instant access to an automated content system. So I can go ahead and type in my email. And then I do ask where people heard about me, where I ask for their full name. And to get them through the page like this without a warning, you can see here other people have links as well, but when you click on them, it gives a user warning. So the Stand Store allows me to avoid that, which allows for a smoother transition to my page. And from here, I offer them a free automated system. Obviously, they can go directly into the community, but I do find that people tend not to just join communities for random reasons. So I have something that's free and compelling that they can get access to right away. When they click on this link, it's going to take them to Typeform, where I ask for their full name. And to get them through the funnel, I make it clear it clear that I'm going to give them instant access to an automated content system that they can install. So they can go ahead and type in their name. And then I ask for their email. And again, I remind them that I'm going to give them instant access to an automated content system. So I can go ahead and type in my email. And then I do ask where people heard about me. And I specifically don't give them a drop down so that I can hear exactly what that is. I found when you force people to put something, you don't get accurate answers. And people really like to describe how they found you. Sometimes people just write TikTok, or they write the talk, or they'll write YouTube, or they'll write a referral from a friend. I find when you restrict it, you don't get as nuanced of an answer. Once they click submit, they're going to get redirected to a landing page. This is the full product that people can actually purchase. So they can take a look at it, watch a video, and then also watch the testimonials about that product. Of course, if this is the first time they've come across this product, they won't purchase it right away as it isn't a low ticket item. But what happens is I have a Zapier process that is looking for that entry in type form, and then I run a series of automations. The first one that I do is I just make sure it's a valid address with never bounce, and I only continue forward if it is a valid email, and then I will add them to an email sequence for new leads. And the first thing it does is it sends them a bonus, that free automated system that I promised them, and I make things very clear on what steps need to happen, and even images that outline what they're going to see. So I tell them to check for an email from the Content Academy. So they're going to get an email just like this from the Content Academy that invites them into that free course. And then once they join, they can follow step number 2 and get access to that automated content system. And then again, I show them an image to show them what that looks like, because it's very easy to lose someone at this step. I really want them to see that there's value here. So you can see here's that email that I was just talking about. Now, if they don't join right away, I do have a series of emails that will follow up with them over time. And one of the things that I decided to do strategically in the email follow-up is when I have a video that they can click on, instead of sending them to YouTube where they can watch the video, I embed this video inside the community, inside a free course. So they end up back in the community and watching the video so that they can then consume the rest of the videos in the course. And again, I made this course available to the public, so you don't even need to be logged in. Here I'm in an incognito window. That way I'm consistently sending them back into the community where they can become a member. And then from within the community, they can get exposed to all the free help that I provide, other free courses that they can get access to, instructions on how to access those courses. They can also access a calendar here, which will give them all of the different events that are happening. And from here, if they click on an event, they can get access to it if they're a member. But I also give them access to a free 7-day trial. If they click on this, it's going to take them to a ThriveCart landing page where they can learn more about the product and how it helps. I'm pretty detailed on what's involved with the product and what they get and how it helps them. I give them a look inside the course itself. I display all the testimonials, answer all their questions, and then I give them access to a free 7-day trial. So it just makes it very easy for people to learn about the product and even use it. And then if they purchase a product, it will automatically enroll them into my CRM, close.io, and I can automatically invite them into the course. And then I can send them a confirmation email with all the next steps. And then I can also tag that subscriber that they purchased the product so that the email thread stops. And then I can tag them as a customer so it will stop the email sequence. And then I can create a one opportunity in the CRM to track the sale. And I think the beauty of this entire system is that because it's driven from the organic content on channels where people are actually following you and enjoy your content, it tends to build a community environment where like-minded folks get to share information and work together. This community is completely free, so you can access this without having to even log in. So there's a lot of people that can come into this community and get a lot of free value taking my free courses. They can watch all of these videos, but then people that want extra help can go ahead and purchase the products. But it's set up in such a way that people can passively understand what you do and how you help, and they can really get comfortable with who you are over a period of time, and they can just ultimately purchase from you without even having to talk with you. So even though I do have a link here that allows people to tell me what they need help with and they can ultimately book a call, I really get very few calls booked onto my calendar for the sales that are coming through the community platform. Now, I know everyone's trying to book their calendar with sales calls, but I'd much rather have a bunch of free time where I can create content, provide value, hang out with my family, and really work on the business instead of going from call to call to call. So you can see this funnel here is quite simple. Create a good video, drive traffic to a free offer, provide value via email and a community, and then drive sales from the people that really want to work with you. So there you go. I hope you found this video valuable. If you want to build out an automated sales machine just like I showed you in this video, make sure to join my community. The link is in the description. Hope to see you there.
So yes, so there is a guitar, there's a man. What else do you play, Fred?
Oh, I did bring some other things. Thank you. Thank you. Some stuff to distribute. Right? Yeah, you do. Yes, absolutely. These amateurs.
Exactly. So yeah, if you stay a while after the talk, he has like merch and CDs he can sell to you.
I have what?
With that, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you.
Fred Pike, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Boy, I can't believe I'm actually at Super Week. You know, I know everybody has said that. And 3 weeks ago, I told Zali, even though I love Zali, I love Petra, I love Betty, I'm not coming, Zali. I'm just a little bit too scared. I can't do it. And as much as I love them, that was sufficient. That was necessary, but not sufficient to get me here. And then, like 10 days ago, Robert and Tim Wilson were texting me, tweeting me, and a message in Twitter saying, "What do you mean you're not going? You got to come. You got to come." And so I gave in to peer pressure. I'm risking my life. Oh, come on. All right, tech support. We've got this fancy, there we go. So I'm risking my life to come to Hungary following somebody's a dog, either Robert or Tim, but they're leading me to Hungary. And, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here. I also know from sitting in the back of the room in the punch card prize yesterday that you can't see shit from the back. So I'm really trying to do a good job of putting things on the slide that you can see. So there's the important part of that slide. So I'm Fred Pike. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which for the Europeans means I'm from Chicago, basically. I work at a company called Northwoods. I'm one of the managing directors, and I lead the GA and GTM practice area there. But that's not why I'm here. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about mandolins. So I'm the president of the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra, which is, yeah, thank you, Matteo. Ooh, okay, the first prize.
Thank you.
You're welcome, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
This, by the way, is I wanted to bring chocolate. And I was flying through Zurich, and I'm thinking, God, the Swiss don't know shit about chocolate. So I'll bring some chocolate from Brazil, where I was just at. So, é o melhor chocolate do Brasil. Now, all the Europeans are going, oh, it's so cute when Americans try to speak another language. But so if you ask questions or if you laugh like you just did, you will get chocolates.
Are you in the picture?
Pardon me?
Are you in the picture?
Oh, there, yeah. Yeah, for those in the back, it says MMO 1908. No, I was not a founding member. I was not here at the beginning. But these gentlemen were, and the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra is the longest continuously operating plectrum orchestra in the world. Now that's a lot of adjectives, but it's pretty cool. So we are the oldest. I'm also, for the last 6 years, I've been a board member of the Classical Mandolin Society of America. Let's listen to 25 seconds of the Super Week theme song on mandolin.
If you're a web designer, here are 4 Wix Studio features you gotta know.
In this video, you help and they can really get comfortable with who you are or offer.